Welcome back, warrior. We have so many good excuses today. I don't know if anybody wants to hear them, though. Oh, boy. Life, Life, where we are trying to put Jesus first. First. I don't even know how to say the word first. First. Not farced. First. Okay. We're now in chapter 18. And look at that. Life. We just got started. We already got to go. 1 sec. We're reading Alma chapter 18. We're going to be doing it in the car and not while I walk. So that's what happens when we put everything off until the last minute, So let's put all my stuff in my pocket. Bring it with. And I probably need to bring my charger. I'll just bring you along. I probably need to bring my charger. Hold on. I need to disconnect the treadmill, because you know how it is when you don't connect the treadmill, or when you leave it connected, children can get hurt, and we do not want that. Okay, so we're on our way over here. Very spooky. So I'll just let you come with. Okay, I'm hoping that the Bluetooth does not make it weird to be in the car, and that it'll get audio the correct way. Okay, so chapter 18 in Alma. King Lamoni supposes that Ammon is the Great Spirit. Ammon teaches the king about the creation, God's dealings with men, and the redemption that comes through Christ. Lamoni believes and falls to the earth as if dead, about 90 BC. Okay, we're going to be reading. Here we go. Just reading on the go. I'm really hoping that my car's Bluetooth doesn't go crazy. So we'll see if we even get any voice audio recording in this. But we are not reading it again if it doesn't. I've already set that boundary. All right. And it came to pass that King Lamoni, which is sad because this would be a really good chapter to actually not have go bad. This is a great chapter. Okay, and it came to pass that King Lamoni caused that his servants should stand forth and testify to all things which they had seen concerning the matter. And when they had all testified to the things which they had seen, and he had learned of the faithfulness of Ammon in preserving his flocks, and also his great power in contending against those who sought to slay him, he was astonished exceedingly, and said, Surely this is more than a man. Behold, is not this the Great Spirit who doth send such great punishments upon this people because of their murders? And they answered the king and said, whether he be the Great Spirit or a man, we know not. But this much we do know, that he cannot be slain by the enemies of the king, neither can they scatter the king's flocks when he is with us, because of his expertness and great strength. Therefore we know that he is a friend to the king. And now, O king, we do not believe that a man has such great power, for we know he cannot be slain. Okay, so something really interesting that my husband and I were talking about was that, first of all, I love that it was just the Lamanites that were just destroying the flocks of King Lamoni. Like, what? Like, they're just destroying themselves. And that's like what the wicked do, is just like, it's not like the Lord is telling him to go destroy the flocks. It's like that's the wicked's idea, or I should say Satan's idea, to convince those weak-minded to do evil acts and killing and doing all those kinds of things that are not good. They're not nice. They're being a bully, really, and they're scattering flocks, and then of course the king is like not helping by killing people too. So then it's like it's just like this evil cycle that they're doing over there. Okay, so then there's that. But then the other thing that we talked about was how there's a lot of scriptural speculation about the slaying, or about the cutting of the arms. And I love myself some scriptural speculation, but apparently there's some really learned scholars who love to continue to speculate. And it says, maybe it wasn't so much that Ammon cut off actual arms. Maybe it was just like arms, like meaning like arms dealer. Like maybe it's just like the weapons that they are using. Maybe he cut them off from being able to use them. And then I was like, what? That doesn't seem like that would be that astonishing, especially for somebody who's like King Lamoni, who kills people all the time. And so I was like, I don't think that's a valid scriptural speculation. And then they talk about the flocks and like what kind of flocks were those that they had to take care of. And naturally when we hear the word flock, I don't know about you, but I just kind of go to like sheep. But it doesn't talk about Ammon being a shepherd or the other guys being shepherds either. And I was like, okay, that's valid. But then I was thinking, wait, but also it doesn't say that they weren't sheep. And so it's like, what kind of other flocks can there be? Anyway, we were like chickens, geese. We really like the flamingo flocks, especially because he's a king and he probably has feathers. And we love flamingos. But really, it came down to me thinking, I don't think that matters that he was like what the flocks were, because it was obviously important enough flocks that the king was killing his servants for not protecting them. And so it was like something that caused the king to become astonished when Ammon cut off arms. And so they were very important to him. And so that's what matters, right? But maybe it was like the servants, or maybe the shepherds were on break or something. They got to take breaks in order to. Maybe they don't have enough people on shift. I don't know. But what I do know is just the fact that King Lamoni was now in a position where he was willing to learn and willing to listen to what Ammon had to say at the very least. And sometimes we have to take drastic measures also in preaching the gospel and telling people about Jesus Christ. It's not always going to be easy, and we might not have to ever cut off people's arms. In fact, I would venture to say that's a bad idea. Don't ever do that. And like, you will get arrested and convicted as a killer. And so that's totally a bad idea. But like, that's what they did back then, and that's not acceptable now in our society. But anyways, we might be asked to do different things that are hard for us to do, but that might be astonishing for other people, and that would actually bless their lives. So I think that's the message that we can take from this. Some comments from the Reddit hostess say that these servants had spent time with Ammon in the fields. They saw him rise up in a very difficult moment. They saw Ammon fight the Lamanites who had come to scatter the sheep. They saw Ammon save their lives and the flocks. Then they saw him get back to work to care for the sheep. And again, we're saying sheep, we don't know. After all this, the conclusion they came to was that they did not know who Ammon was, but they knew he was a friend to the king because he was protecting them, right? Okay, so verses 5-7. Now this was the tradition of Lamoni, which he had received from his father, that there was a great spirit. Notwithstanding, they believed in a great spirit. They supposed that whatsoever they did was right. Nevertheless, Lamoni began to fear exceedingly, with fear lest he had done wrong in slaying his servants. Well, that's good that he's feeling a little bit of remorse there. Killing peeps, of course. That is not nice. And needs to cause people serious remorse and repentance. And then verse 6, for he had slain many of them, because their brethren had scattered their flocks at the place of water, and thus because they had their flocks scattered, they were slain. Sometimes you think like doing things is like you don't even think of what you're doing, you just think it's funny. And I think that's just like, you got to think before you act, and I think maybe the people who were scattering King Lamoni's flocks thought it was hilarious. I want to venture to say, this is a scriptural speculation to me, that they didn't actually know that the king was killing those peeps. So, because if they did, that would mean that it was really mean of them to do that. But I'm guessing, like, I would say that they didn't know that, which is really sad, because maybe if they had known that, maybe they would have stopped. I don't know. Who's to say? Okay. And thus, because they had their flock scattered, they were slain. Okay. And verse 7. Now it was the practice of these Lamanites to stand by the waters of Sebus to scatter the flocks of the people, that thereby they might drive away many that were scattered unto their own land, it being a practice of plunder among them. Okay, so I need to switch hands, because this is getting a little painful, getting a cramp in my hand from holding it over there. Okay, so there's a quote from Elder J.E. Jensen, and he said, with those without an eternal perspective, or those who lose sight of it, make their own standards to benefit themselves and their own selfish interests. Their mortal perspective becomes their standard, and for some, their God. Ammon taught King Lamoni, who had always lived by the light of his mortality, about God, a divine power higher than the king. The king supposed that whatsoever he did was right, but Ammon's example and message touched his heart, and he began to fear exceedingly, with fear lest he had done wrong. Ammon then expounded unto them the plan of redemption. End quote. Elder J.E. Jensen, April 2000 General Conference. Yeah, sometimes we don't know things until we know them, and then we will be held accountable for now knowing it, but not necessarily for not knowing it before that. And then verse 8, and it came to pass that King Lamoni inquired of his servants, saying, where is this man that has such great power? And they said unto him, behold, he is feeding thy horses. Now the king had commanded his servants, previous to the time of the watering of their flocks, that they should prepare his horses and chariots, and conduct him forth to the land of Nephi. For there had been a great feast appointed at the land of Nephi by the father of Lamoni, who was king over all the land. Now when King Lamoni heard that Ammon was preparing his horses and his chariots, he was more astonished because of the faithfulness of Ammon, saying, surely there has not been any servant among all my servants that has been so faithful as this man, for even he doth remember all my commandments to execute them. Now I surely know that this is the Great Spirit, and I would desire him that he come in unto me, but I durst not. Okay, so let's see, where was I? But I durst not. Verse 11. Okay, so King Lamoni is now very afraid, so he asks where Ammon is, and finds out that Ammon is feeding the horses. King Lamoni was preparing to leave for a great feast that his father, who was the king over the land, was preparing. So Ammon was dutifully preparing the horses for the journey. King Lamoni is astonished because Ammon remembers and executes each of the king's commands. Okay, so I think there's some lessons here. First of all, when you're doing what you need to do and you are keeping the commandments of the Lord, you can stay focused on your goals, and you're able to accomplish those things that you wanted to accomplish. Okay, so that's Ammon. He's focused. He's doing those things that he needs to do. And then the second thing is that it is hard to find good employees, and I'm guessing the king is also having a hard time finding good employees, especially among wicked people, right? Wicked people, or people who are making wicked choices, because they're not in sync with their purpose. They're not in sync with their goals, and so they're just kind of, doing whatever they want, and so they get easily distracted by all the things that they're not supposed to be doing. Okay, and so they're not good employees, and they're not good workers, and so he's shocked by the fact that Ammon is actually a good employee, a good worker. And it makes sense, because how can anybody remember two things? It's like, I know I tell our kids to do this, and this, and they do the one thing, and then that's it. And then, sometimes they'll do the second thing, but definitely they forget the third thing. And so it's like hard to keep people focused. And, there's things that you can do to help yourself, like make a plan and write things out. But I don't think that's what those people were doing. They were just kind of making those poor choices. Anyway, so the king's now super amazed and astonished that Ammon not only has the power to cut off people's arms and protect his sheep, but also to remember all the things that the king has said and to do those without being asked. When you fill out job applications or you're putting in a resume, you always want to put self-starter or what is it? What's the other word? It's like when you don't want, like you don't need supervision to like move along in the progress of like what you're working on. Because people who need supervision are not as cool as people who don't need supervision. If you don't need supervision, that's even better. You can work from home. You can do all these things. You have like more liberty and freedom if you don't need to be supervised. But if you need to be babysat and supervised while you're doing your work so you can stay focused, then A, you wouldn't get paid as much, and B, you probably won't be an employee there for very long. So anyway, so he's one of those self-starters. He's one of those like proactive, there's a word, proactive employees, workers, and peeps. Oh, nice. And peeps who a person who does not need supervision or to be babied on the clock, right? So we love this guy. And we want every person and every employee and everywhere to be like that. That's just what would be amazing, And we currently have awesome employees at our Snowco shave ice hot cocoa stand, and it is so neat to see how awesome they are and how much they're excited to work. And they're like always like, can we get more hours and all that stuff. And what's really hard is we're just struggling to get people there. And so I'm like, oh man, if they could just come, that would be sweet. And then, but I do know, like from helping Clark hire some other people, it's hard. Like the young adults, like it's like more convenient for them to not work or have a schedule than to have a schedule and work. And so it's kind of interesting how the 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds that we have working for us are so excited to work and like are so focused and doing all their things and want to work. And then like by the time you get to like 21, you're like, I don't want to work anymore. I have all my life that I want to do and get distracted by, and you call out and sick or late, and you just, like what happens between that stage? I don't know. Anyway, so enough ranting. Okay, there's a quote from Sister Mary Ellen W. Smoot from the October 2000 General Conference. She says, service is a key to being an effective instrument. The sons of Mosiah chose to serve the Lamanites rather than assume leadership of their father's kingdom. And in many instances, their service softened the hearts of the Lamanites and made them receptive to the gospel. When Lamoni's servants were busy recounting Ammon's exploits in fending off marauders, Ammon himself was in the stable feeding the horses and serving the king. End quote. Right? Because he's not like busy like showing off all his skills, like, hey, look what I did, and like going around boasting and things like that. He's just like, okay, moving right along to my next task, because that is what a productive person does. Okay, verse 12 to 14. Okay, I'm going to switch my hands again, cramping. Here we go. And it came to pass that when Ammon had made ready the horses and the chariots for the king and his servants, he went in unto the king, and he saw that the countenance of the king was changed. Therefore he was about to return out of his presence. And one of the king's servants said unto him, Rabbana, which is being interpreted powerful or great king, considering their kings to be powerful. And thus he said unto him, Rabbana, the king desireth thee to stay. Therefore Ammon turned himself unto the king and said unto him, What wilt thou that I should do for thee, O king? And the king answered him not for the space of an hour, according to their time, for he knew not what he should say unto him. So this was like, this was so wild, like moment of silence for like an hour. And imagine that in your class, if you're teaching a class of anyone. I was going to say youth specifically, but no, it's literally anyone. Like, because I teach Relief Society now, and in fact I have a lesson on Sunday, and I'm mortified to try to go and teach it. But anyway, so it's hard getting participation, and you want to jump in because you're like, let's just keep this moving, but you also want to like leave the silence so that people can like really ponder and think and generate their own answers. And so like, and let the Spirit teach them. You have to have silence for the Spirit to teach you, because it's too loud and noisy otherwise. Anyway, so for an hour, imagine like us sitting there for an hour asking a question and then sitting there for an hour. So the Spirit had a lot of good time to have with King Lamoni to talk to him. And it says, And it came to pass that Ammon said unto him again, What desirest thou of me? But the king answered him not. So he's like, so anything? No? Nothing yet, huh? You don't have anything you want to say? Okay, so it's pretty shocking, right? Because it's like, he's a king. I'm sure he has something to say all the time. At least I know I always have something to say. So imagine if everybody were just there wanting to listen to me speak. I would always have something to say, I'm sure. So anyway, let's see. So verse 16, and it came to pass that Ammon, being filled with the Spirit of God, therefore he perceived the thoughts of the king. And he said unto him, Is it because thou hast heard that I defended thy servants and thy flocks, and slew 7 of their brethren with the sling and with the sword, and smote off the arms of others in order to defend thy flocks and thy servants? Behold, is it this that causeth thy marvelings? Ammon, he's so funny. He's like, what? Really? That's like, I do that every day. I'm just protecting people's flocks all the time. I'm going from one king to the next, It sounds like something that he does on a regular basis. Like, what? That small thing? Ah, shucks. Don't even mention it, Verse 17, I say unto you, what is it that thy marvelings what is it that thy marvelings are so great? Behold, I am a man, and I am the servant. I'm thy servant. Therefore, whatsoever thou desirest, which is right, that will I do. Now when the king had heard these words, he marveled again, for he beheld that Ammon could discern his thoughts. Notwithstanding this, King Lamoni did open his mouth, and said unto him, Who art thou? Art thou that great Spirit who knows all things? Right? Isn't that what you always want to ask prophets anyway? When they're talking, you're like, who is this guy? How does he know all these things? And then Ammon answered and said unto him, I am not. And the king said, How knowest thou the thoughts of my heart? Thou mayest speak boldly, and tell me concerning these things, and also tell me by what power ye slew and smote off the arms of my brethren that scattered my flocks. And now, if thou wilt tell me concerning these things, whatsoever thou desirest, I will give unto thee. And if it were needed, I would guard thee with my armies. But I know that thou art more powerful than they. Nevertheless, whatsoever thou desirest of me, I will grant it unto thee. And now Ammon, being wise, yet harmless, he said unto Lamoni, Wilt thou hearken unto my words, if I tell thee by what power I do these things? And this is the thing that I desire of thee. So this is why he was here. But at the same time, I'm like, I love that he mentioned that he was harmless, right? Because he wasn't about to be like, and give me half your kingdom, I just want to tell you about Jesus, right? That's all. Verse 23, and the king answered him and said, Yea, I will believe all thy words. And thus he was caught with guile. And Ammon began to speak unto him with boldness, and said unto him, Believest thou that there is a God? So this is the first essential belief, which is probably why it's our first article of faith. Okay, it looks like we're here. We're on now verse 25. Let's see, how far are we? Oh, this one goes to 43, so that's kind of a long. So we're just going to pause it for a second. But we're in verse 25. Okay, 25. But like we need to start there. 25. Okay, remember how we were on verse 25 in the car? Now we're back to walking. Here we go. And he answered and said unto him, I do not know what that meaneth. The believest that thou that there is a God question. Okay. And then Ammon said, Believest thou that there is a great spirit? So now he's trying to change it to his own words that he can understand. And he said, Yea. And Ammon said, This is God. And Ammon said unto him again, Believest thou that this great spirit, who is God, created all things which are in heaven and in earth and in the earth? And he said, Yea, I believe that he created all things which are in the earth, but I do not know the heavens. And Ammon said unto him, The heavens is a place where God dwells, and all his holy angels. And King Lamoni said, Is it above the earth? And Ammon said, Yea, and he looketh down upon all the children of men, and he knows all the thoughts and intents of the heart, for by his hand were they all created from the beginning. And King Lamoni said, I believe all these things which thou hast spoken. Art thou sent from God? And this is a good question, because aren't we all sent from God? So I'd be like, well, yeah, but let's elaborate a little bit. Ammon said unto him, I am a man, and man in the beginning was created after the image of God. And I am called by his Holy Spirit to teach these things unto this people, that they may be brought to a knowledge of that which is just and true. And a portion of that Spirit dwelleth in me, which giveth me knowledge and also power according to my faith and desires which are in God. Okay, so Ammon is giving him the whole good spiel and about who God is and telling him about the Great Spirit. Here is a quote. This is what the Red Hat Hostess says. King Lamoni asks, Art thou sent from God? The answer is yes, but Ammon handles this carefully. He wants the king to know that Ammon is just a man. Notice the doctrine he teaches. I am a man, and a man in the beginning was created after the image of God. So Ammon carefully teaches important doctrines of the plan of salvation as he answers the king's questions. Notice how Ammon keeps these things simple as the king is comprehending these new truths. So when we are teaching children or others, we too have to keep it simple. I remember one time, well, probably a couple times, where I'm talking to people and I try to keep it simple, but it's so weird because, once you know how to do something or you've learned something, it is simple to you, but it's actually not simple when you go to explain it to somebody else, or when you have to share it. You're like, oh, this is actually kind of complicated for somebody who doesn't know all these things, right? And so I remember one time getting so caught up in something weird that I was like, I don't even know how we got there. And now this person probably wants nothing to do with our religion because I totally made it weird. Anyway, so there's a quote from Dean R. Burgess from the April 2008 General Conference. It says, Ammon then explained who he was when he said, I am a man created after the image of God, and I am called by his Holy Spirit to teach this people. Ammon knew who he was and what his true mission was. Finding out who we are is one of life's greatest quests. As parents and leaders, we make a sincere and honest effort to help those we love understand and know the answer to this simple but profound question. Who am I? End quote. Ooh, I love that. And there's another quote about that, which is something like, there's there's 2 days that are the most important days in a person's life. Now I'm trying to remember what it is. Can't remember. Hold on. I'm going to look that one up because it is worth looking at. Okay, I found it. It is from Mark Twain, and it's: the 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why you were born. I guess that's not the way that the quote says. Hold on. Let me read it again the way that the quote is. The 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And that's from Mark Twain. And I love that because it is so true. Once you find out who you are, it makes all the difference in your life. Okay, we'll keep going. Verses 36 to 39. Okay, now when Ammon had said these words, he began at the creation of the world and also the creation of Adam, and told him all the things concerning the fall of man, and rehearsed and laid before him the records and the holy scriptures of the people, which had been spoken by the prophets, even down to the time that their father Lehi left Jerusalem. And he also rehearsed unto them, for it was unto the king and to his servants all the journeyings of their fathers in the wilderness, and all their sufferings with hunger and thirst, and their travail, and so forth. And he also rehearsed unto them concerning the rebellions of Laman and Lemuel, and the sons of Ishmael. Yea, all the rebellions did he relate unto them, and he expounded unto them all the records and scriptures from the time that Lehi left Jerusalem down to the present time. So he's giving like a history, family history, right? But this is not all, for he expounded unto them the plan of redemption, which was prepared from the foundation of the world. And he also made known unto them concerning the coming of Christ. And all the works of the Lord did he make known unto them. And it came to pass that after he had said all these things and expounded them to the king, that the king believed all his words. And he began to cry unto the Lord, saying, O Lord, have mercy, according to thy abundant mercy which thou hast had upon the people of Nephi. Have upon me and my people. And now when he had said this, he fell unto the earth as if he were dead. Oh, that wouldn't be scary at all. And it came to pass that his servants took him and carried him in unto his wife, and laid him upon the bed. And he lay as if he were dead for the space of 2 days and 2 nights. And his wife and his sons and his daughters mourned over him, after the manner of the Lamanites, greatly lamenting his loss. Okay. So there's Elder James M. Paramore from April 1986 General Conference has this to say about true ministry. It says, ponder these points as you feel the influence of Ammon's teachings, his ministry, and great example. So there's 7 points. 1, the desire of his heart was to bring people to God. 2, he was always a servant, a minister. He was out among the people. 3, he prepared himself by fasting, studying the scriptures, and prayer. 4, he went forth believing he could make a difference with the help of God. 5, he anxiously looked for every possible opportunity to serve. 6, he kept all the commandments. 7, as a result of doing all these things, he taught with power and authority and established the church of God. The great promise to all of God's children who truly minister, serve, love, and teach the gospel is that one day they may sit at the right hand of the Savior and be received into his presence. May the Lord make us able ministers, as was Ammon. This should be the end result of every principle and truth we learn in the gospel. This is truly the gospel in action. End quote. Ooh, I love that so much. Okay, we have a read it, live it. So 1 second. Okay. Here we go. It's from verse 9. Okay, before Ammon ever taught a word to King Lamoni, he fed horses, prepared chariots, and defended the flocks. First and foremost, he was just a great friend to the king. What do you learn about teaching from this example? Prepare the chariots. Oh, I love that so much. All right. Until chapter 19, stay strong, warrior.